So good morning, and welcome to the 47th CALLERLAB Convention in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Today is April 12th, 2022, and this is the Creative Challenge session. I am Ray Brendzy, and I'm serving as moderator, and our panelists are Harlan Kerr, Jeremy Butler, and myself, Ray Brendzy. And we're going to spend the next hour or so going over some concepts and interesting things that you might do at Challenge. And we're going to begin with Harlan Kerr.
Okay, it is on. There's no red light. Okay, so we're talking about three different things, and one, I guess it was with Ray, I had this discussion that we were talking about, what do you do in Creative Challenge? And the big thing is, challenge sort of, by definition, is creative. And I always kind of look at sort of the hierarchy of programs, kind of like, just because I have an educational background, is that basic is like primary grades, and a mainstream is like your intermediate grades, 4, 5, 6, and plus it's like middle school, advanced is like high school. C1 is sort of undergraduate work, C2 sort of some extra work beyond your undergraduate, C3A is kind of like your master's, C3 is kind of like your doctorate, and then C4 is your postdoctoral work. And I also kind of think that if you look at it in terms of, I used to be an avid skier, my knees went bad, and I got to the competitive level, and sort of, you have like the blue circle, which is kind of basic mainstream, and then you have the green squares, which is kind of advanced, and then when you start getting into the black diamonds, you start talking about challenge. And so if it was done the way I think it should be done, and it's not always done that way, by the time dancers get to C1, they expect creative choreography. And by time callers get to calling C1, they should really understand creative choreography, be very good dancers. One of the interesting things I sometimes find is callers who call C1 and they can't dance C1. And I always think you should call at least 2 levels above what you dance. You should dance 2 levels above what you call. So, and that's just my personal thing. I didn't start calling C1 in front of people until I could dance 3A. Part of it is knowing where you're going to. Anyway, so when I look at writing challenge, I was talking to someone last night, and they said, well, I put in a call, and I hit, and I get the menu of the next calls I can call from there. I choose one that's on the, and it's like, if you have to do that, you're not writing challenge well. So I really think that if you're going to be creative in challenge, I actually don't write my stuff on Vic's program. I write my stuff on a tablet, and then I push checkers around, and when I finally think it's okay and I've checked the flow and everything, then I put it through here to double check it. And what I find is where people fall down in being creative in challenge is they just sit down at SD or Vic's program or a few other programs I think might do challenge, but I doubt it, and just enter calls. And they don't think about flow, they don't think about how calls work together, they don't think about how they're moving dancers, and there's low-level creativity. If you're just putting in, heads past the ocean, okay, from this menu of calls, I can call Scoot and Class. So, okay, now I can call Scoot and Ramble. Okay, now I can call, and I think you think out what you're going to call, and I'm glad that Debbie and Vic are here, even though it's like having the master in front of you. That
I gotta go get my cowboy boots.
It's getting deep.
And I hope this is true because Debbie told me it one day. You know, Vic actually keeps a tablet by the bed and gets up and jots down ideas in the middle of the night.
You sick pup.
And so, you know, he thinks, which implies that he thinks through what he can do and how he can use it in a different and creative way before he ever sits down to write it out or put it into his program or whatever. And I do have one story that once when he was writing a series of sequences for Ace at C4, Debbie heard him cackling as he did it. And that was the time he started with the 2 couple, then 3 couple, then 4 couple, then 5 couple, way back when. And anyway, so that's kind of my spiel on you really have to be creative. If you're doing just random calls that you get pulling up on the program that says you can call this call next, you're not going to be creative. And which brings me to Tally Ho, which I think is one of the most interesting calls written in that it can come from multiple formations. There's an argument over how many. I think it can come from at least 32 or 33 formations. Some people think that it can come from 38 or 9, which I think there's the last few, I'm going to give you a little handout on it, are controversial at least and bogus probably. But so what I do when I'm writing for my cards is, and well actually let's start with when I'm teaching C1. When I teach C1, I start with waves and I do it 4 times, because if you do it 4 times from a wave, it gives them all the positions. And then I immediately go into doing it from trade by and from facing lines. And I consciously, when I'm writing a dance, try to do tally ho from waves only 30% of the time. I keep track of how many times I use it from waves. And because I got, 30 some other formations I can do it from. Some of them are, you have to do kind of checkerboardy things to get into them. And so I thought, so what should I do for these folks here today? And I thought originally, well, I could write a series of what I think is creative, exciting, tally-ho sequences. And what I decided instead is just to make you aware of the different places you can call tally-ho from, and to give you an idea so you can go back and think, hey, I can do tally-ho from here, I can do tally-ho from there, and use it as you work creatively putting together choreography. So that said, you guys got my email about copyright, didn't you? I sent it about a week ago saying I'm not violating any of your copyright if I use.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Think about it. Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely.
So another caller put together a list of positions you can call.
Take the mic with you.
Positions you can call tally-ho from at C1. Again, some of these I think are not legal. Let's put it that way. And just test the water, how many of you here regularly call tally-ho? Or call C1? Everyone? I know Mike does.
Every day. I call it every day.
So anyway, what I thought I would do is, I have another handout I'll give to you, which has all the sequences I'm going to be talking about, and let you take it home and use it as kind of a primer for starting to use tally-ho in more creative ways.
Thank you.
So let's just start out with a quick look at, this is a paper by Dave Heffron where he lists all the formations you can call tally-ho from supposedly. He notes a couple that he thinks are not legal. I think there's a couple more that are at least controversial. And I'm kind of okay with everything until we get up into the 30s. And, you know, when you look at this list, when I get to sort of 26, 27, 28, 29, those are ones that I think are somewhat controversial in themselves even. But particularly when you get up into the 30s, there are some places where I think it's ill-defined who are the centers and who are the ends. And so I avoid those. But I thought I would take some of these formations and just run through basically some workshop sequences, which I've given you, so you can get used to seeing how they're used. And the level of creativity in these sequences is not that high. So we're going to start with the first one. And again, it's just no heads, wheel, pass through, pan through. You guys want to do this in a square, or you just want to see this? I think if we do it in a square, which is sort of my original plan, you get to the point where everybody's dancing and nobody's sitting there watching. So, again, this first one uses tally-ho from centers facing in and the ends facing out, a place where you could color-train by if you want to. And so basically, like I said, I avoid calling tally-ho from ways more than 30% of the time when I'm calling a C1 dance, because it gets redundant, among other things, which translates to boring. So tally-ho from there. This is one of my favorite uses of tally-ho. Tally-ho from right-hand two-face line. Tally-ho is really interesting in that if you do it from right-hand two-face lines, you get a much different result than if you do it from left-hand two-face lines. Here, the dancers are in right-hand two-face lines, and this will end up with a crash and a triple box set up. So tally-ho from here, after the half circulated, and there you have a part created on the outside, and you end up with a crash. So from there I'd use to demonstrate what happens from left-hand two-face line. I had them do triple box circulate. So now they're in a left-hand two-face line, and rather than a crash, here's what happens. You end up in a 3-in-1 line, and you can do some interesting things by adding centers with the flow or doing something different with the centers at the end. So if I do centers with the flow, then I get back in a wave. Then good old standard tally-ho from waves, and quick, easy, not too creative, get out, tandem trade, cross by Alabama. Over here, sort of the same thing. So starting to use some of the different formations that are in the paper handed out. Heads pass in, double pass through, center shake down and pass through. And one of the most difficult things that I find dancers have with tally-ho, where the centers are facing out like this, is the half circulate actually takes them to a center wave, but their dancers easily confuse that they are ins and centers after the half circulate, because they stay far apart when in fact the half circulate would take them to the center wave. The outsides aren't going to have any problem, but the centers will. So that might be something you want to look at and workshop with your dancers if you're going to start using that kind of setup for tally-ho. But then ends up in a wave. One of the things that I find, particularly beginner callers at C1, they call tally-ho from right-hand waves only. And being an educator, some research that I've done is if you do something 26 times from the same position, it becomes ingrained. If you do it 48 times from the same position, it becomes so set in your mind that you think you can't do it any other way. So the first 48 times your dancers do tally-ho, they do it from waves, particularly only right-hand waves. You're going to really inhibit their ability to do tally-ho from other positions. So, like I said, from the first time I introduced tally-ho, I do it 4 times from waves just because it gives everyone a chance to positions. Then immediately I go do a trade by and keep adding different formations. And over the next 3 weeks of my class, I add 2 or 3 formations for doing tally-ho from every night, and so that my dancers are not used to dancing tally-ho from waves. It's well, sometimes we get it from waves, sometimes we get it from here, sometimes we get it from there. And I don't want my dancers to go out and come back to things that the big cedar called tally-ho from here, and you never told us that they do it from here. Actually, I get big cedar called this, and I didn't know you could do this. Well, and it's usually something asymmetric.
Who is this Vic Cedar guy?
Big Cedar is one of my heroes. Actually, it's his wife.
Yeah.
This is being recorded. This is being recorded. I want that known. So, yeah.
Anyway, so again, just if you're working with dancers and you're a new caller at C1, do it from left-hand waves at least as much as you do it from right-hand waves. Don't build brain goose in your dancers. And this just goes on. Another situation, again, this is the very hard one, where the centers can very easily think they're outsides after the half circulate, and I think you really have to point that out in teaching tally-ho if you're going to use that as a creative approach to tally. So I encourage you to do that. And this goes on. So what I have given you is I've given you about 30 workshops. They're not highly creative sequences. They're workshop sequences that use all the setups for tally hold that I think are reasonable to use. Again, I said it's starting in the late 20s, and the numbers that the Dave Havre paper has, I think there are some things that are questionable, and some things that are just bogus. And so I would encourage you to go through the sequences I gave you. Use those with your dancers so they get used to dancing tally ho from as many positions as possible. And then when you are writing, and again, like I said, these are workshop sequences, they're not highly creative sequences. Go back to the process that I use, is really thinking through what you're going to write and how you're going to write it, and don't even start putting things in to your program or anything. Again, like I say, I write things out on paper, I run through it in my head, I check for flow. One thing I do that, I found when the programs first came out, I could start calling back when you push checkers. And you have to push them through about 18 times, so you always make a mistake somewhere.
Same mistake.
So what I do with programs is I keep a pencil beside me, and after each call I turn the pencil right, left, or leave it straight ahead, so I know the flow of the call before. And I think in terms of writing creative choreography, one of the worst things that happened with when we left checkers behind and went to writing on computers is that it is really, really easy to write really bad flow on computers. I say, oh, okay, it says I can do this call next. Oh, say it, I can do this call next. And callers don't check for the flow, let alone walk through in their heads or physically walk through the sequence. And it's so easy to write really bad flow sequences if you don't track flow as you're writing your sequences. So, and I think flow should be seamless, there are certain colors who I think do a really good job. One of them sitting over here. Ben Rubright, another one who has pretty seamless and really good flow. And the other thing that happens with people writing on computers and not keeping track of it, saying, well, this would be good, this would be good, is they either write bad flow or they write overflow. Everything goes to the right until your right leg starts to get a little shorter. So be aware of that. And so creative choreography, also I think the last thing I want to say about it, because I think I'm getting near the end of my 20 minutes, is there's a difference between creative choreography and what's often referred to as WFH choreography, which is really effing hard choreography. You can write stuff really hard that's just awful. And the thing is to write something that works well, that's creative, that's unique, and has good flow, and is well thought out. You don't just run it out, saying, okay, what calls can I call the computer? Computer says, you can call these 18 calls. Oh, I'll call that one. Oh, I'll call that one. I'll call that one. The other thing I think that some people do on writing choreography that interferes with the creativity of it, they get carried away. They write sequences that are amazingly long. 42 calls long, not quite that long, but so watch your link. So creative choreography really is a matter of thinking in a manner that really is creative. Doing things different, but doing it with good flow, well thought out, really going through it in your head and making sure that you do things unique. It's like if you use tally ho, use it from a whole bunch of different situations, but use it in a well creative way that flows well. And main thing you want the dancers to say, hey, that was cool, that was cool, that was cool. They don't want to say that, that was just all. And so, creating choreography, particularly at Challenge, it's a task, and it's a task that has to be well thought out. Another thing you have to keep in mind, particularly as you call to more sophisticated dance floors are more the upper programs and challenges. The dancers probably know as much about the calls and choreography as you do. And so, take that into mind. Okay, and now I guess it's on to Jeremy.
Well, we're not finished here yet. We get to comment and make discussions and roast you, Harlan. I know that one of the interesting things I've always run across is dancers who have different opinions of definitions, and one of the funny ones I've found with tally-ho is when I call it from an inverted line, where the centers are facing out and the ends are facing in. And the ends think that they're the centers because they're walking into the middle, and the centers think that they're the ends because they're sort of walking out of the square. And we always teach them that centers stay centers and ends stay ends. But the neat thing about that call is if they argue with you, it really doesn't matter because the resolve is the same as long as it's a right and left grand. It doesn't put them out of sequence or gear. So I always let them dream about whatever they want. But I've run across people in different parts of the world that think that the ends become the centers when they do a tally-ho, and the centers become the ends, and it really doesn't throw it out of sequence. And so I'm not sure what part of the world it was that I was in there, but I think it was just some dancers that were stuck in their old ways.
Well, I think it's really I think it's really critical, particularly since some dancers are going to be moving on to other programs, that they really understand who are the centers and who are the ends in that situation. And like I said, and like Ray said, the centers, it feels like they're moving to the outside, but goes back to the whole concept of, square breathing and knowing that it's a concentric kind of thing.
Yeah, so any comments, any additions, anything you want to throw out there? Okay. Coming to the microphone is Debbie Cedar's husband.
I'm Debbie Cedar's husband from California. One of the very nice things about tally-ho, the challenge, or the challenge, being on the challenge list, is because it teaches you have to know how to hinge, you have to know how to half circulate, you have to know how to trade, cast 3/4. All of these things are all put together in tally-ho because you've got half circulates from different positions, hinges from different kinds of hinges, different kinds of trades, different kinds of cast-off, 3/4, and it really, being able to do tally-ho is basically what a C1 dancer needs to accomplish, because it teaches all those little tiny short basics, and they have to know them very well.
And once again, we go back to, you must be a very talented basic dancer in order to be a good C1 dancer. You have to have a good foundation.
My name's Larry Marquise. I'm from the Denver, Colorado area. I'm a newbie when it comes to C1, but we're currently, there's a C1 class going on, where I often call C1, and it's being run by somebody else. But the question about tally-ho and who are the centers and who are the ends, this comes up quite a bit because for motion waves, once the half circulate happens, there's two ends that end up on the, there's two ends that end up on the outside, but there's also two centers that end up in the outside. So by saying centers always stay centers or always stay ends, that doesn't gel because it depends on the formation that you started from. So we avoid talking like that about the call and get back to, the functionality because of that difference between ocean wave, tally-ho, and like the inverted line, the example that you gave. Is that your understanding as well, how you talk about tally-ho?
Absolutely.
You don't say centers are always centers and ends are always ends.
The Dick Cedar again. The whole thing with the ends is for the halves. It's for the half circulate, so that they know what they're doing and who they're going to meet, and that kind of stuff. So that's what. It's not that that's going to be happening throughout the entire call, because the main thing about Tally Ho and a lot of other challenge calls is this, you have to reevaluate after each part.
Yes.
And in Tally Ho, you do your half circulate, then you look around, reevaluate. Oh, now I'm here. Now this is the next part I do.
Yes.
So there's a piecewise reevaluation on some of these things.
Yes.
Yeah, and with the inverted lines in particular, one inverted line is easy versus the other inverted line, which is
Anybody else? One of the things I think that's the hardest thing for newer dancers at C1 and Tally Ho is that the initial half circulate comes really fast. And it's like, Tally Ho, it comes really fast for the half circulate, then they have to do what Vic said is, am I center, am I in, do I hinge, do I trade? And because that first part comes so fast, it makes it challenging for lots of dancers.
Hence the name challenge.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and back home, some of my dancers just dancing Tally Ho from, a boy, girl wave is enough to make it creative for them. So we really have to read our floors and know what's creative.
And that comes up when I teach Tally Ho. Oh, is that comes from say, this is why it's called challenge. And it's called challenge for a reason. And it's, it's a different step, it's a different approach, it's a different way of thinking than you had up until now. And lots of things, so it's time to move on to the next.
Thank you, Harlan. Let's have a nice hand for Harlan. Thank you. Okay, we're going to turn it over to Jeremy, whose view on creative challenge is just doing some weird stuff. So I'm going to let him play with you for a bit.
But yeah, that's exactly kind of the way that I look at it is when I'm looking to make something creative, I think of something that I've never seen before, and I try and use that. Or I look at, there's one of these sequences, and we'll get to it, but where I ended up with a situation where I thought, well, if I have the girls press ahead here, I'm going to have a really weird, messed up thing. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I pushed my checkers through it, figured out how to use it. Maybe it's not the smoothest thing, but it's interesting. While I try and write smooth and flowing choreography, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the interesting can take over, as long as your whole thing isn't that way, So anyway, so most of my stuff we're going to need a square, because if you try and read this, it won't work. So.
I got a partner.
Good job.
I got a corner.
And you're red, so we can carry you up.
Yeah, perfect.
There you go.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, they're bees.
No, they're ants from
Or they-
Taiwan. This is ant squares from Taiwan.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Put wings on them.
All right. So the first one that I've got on here is, what I start talking about replaces, skips, interrupts, butts, those types of things. To me, those are the easiest way to interject different choreography, because you can do a lot of things that people just don't think about. I mean, you can interrupt. I mean, you can interrupt a call with just about anything, right? And that's one of the cool things that I think there is about replaces and skips and interrupts and that sort of thing. But so let's have the heads lead right, rear left, bend the line, right and left.
I can do that.
Turn a quarter more. There we go. All right. So this one here is just an interrupt thing, but it's probably something that doesn't get done very often. You're going to need to move slowly through this. All the boys run around the girls. Thank you. Counter rotate. right? You're going to alter the wave, but interrupt before each of the diamond rotates with a 6-2 AC-DC. Half. So before we do it, we're going to do that 6-2. We're going to rotate this one a quarter. Now here's the tricky part. You got to figure out who's where. Do the 6-2. Rotate it one more time. Who are my points? Who are my centers? Flip it. There you go. Very strange, yes. We're going to do the same thing again, all right? Except this time we're going to replace, or we're going to interrupt before each of the diamond rotates with a 3x2 AC-DC. Go again. Yep. That's it. 3x2. Rotate it. 1 quarter. There you go. We need another 3x2. Yep. Rotate it. Who's in it? And a right and left granted. So, you know, obviously that is wacko, but it's interesting because it gives them those 6x2s and those 3x2s that they're not expecting. They're not expecting to see those point-to-point diamonds using that 6x2 or that 3x2. So I think that's fun. You know, and there's a whole bunch of calls, you know, that I like to think about finishing calls, and you know, you think about finishing pass and roll, finish relay the shadow. You can finish relay the shadow from a whole lot of fun title places. All right, you finish load the boat. You can get into formations that don't even look like a load the boat situation, and you can finish load the boat. So that's a lot of fun. Cross chain and roll. Here's a fun one that I gave to Jack Platties and he used the other night at his dance. Heads pair off. This is real simple. Finish do paso.
And you're home.
I think we got a wrong hand.
Basics are fun. You have to really know a really good basic dancer to be a challenge
And you
dancer.
that's nice from a right-hand wave too, right?
Yes, it is.
Hey,
It is very
no,
nice
you're
for
good.
right-handed wave. Of course, another way to get really interesting and get into some different things that you might not run into all the time is asymmetrically, of course. Heads wheel fan through.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Never.
Touch a quarter and weave.
Over here, Carmen. There you go.
There you go. Switch to a diamond.
Do I make you nervous?
And I like to use identifiers that are different. So the near point triangles circulate. Just the near points. There we go. Yep, weird. All right. Flip the diamond. Slip. Leaders press ahead and trade. And look, we've got boy blocks and we've got girl blocks. And that's always fun.
What?
Right, so let's have the boy blocks touch a quarter and the girl blocks left touch a quarter. This is a funky situation. Those who can, jaywalk.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you.
One more time, those who can, jaywalk. So 1, 2 of you. There you go. In the blocks, everybody trade and roll. The outside dancers press ahead. How do you properly say that? Outers press ahead.
Sounded good to
No
me.
great way to do it, okay.
Dancers did it.
Dancers know what you mean.
The dancers get it, got it. Touch a quarter. It worked, you all did it, right? The far box, zing, the near box, quarter in. Everybody pass in, the centers twice. And you're home. Very nice. Couple number 3, half sachet.
1, 2.
Great big challenge. Good challenge.
I know, heads wheel through.
Oh God, now I'm in trouble.
Everybody wheel through. Just the far line, single wheel. Everybody's looking at me, hi. Work Siamese, the axle. Good left shoulder pass.
I am lost. Out to the end.
They're trading you
guys-
back.
There you go.
You guys are-
Perfect. Now
just
nobody's
stay back
looking at me.
there,
What did I
yeah.
do wrong? All right. Siamese, the ends bend.
Should we crash? No.
No.
On this side.
No, just bending, yeah.
Okay.
In the far column, quarter in. I usually say roll, but I waited too long. Oh, I forgot a part. Oh well, there was a Siamese mix in there. Everybody go home.
Where?
I won't do it again, but there's a Siamese mix
A nice
in there.
circle.
The point is you can do some calls like the axle and that you wouldn't normally do Siamese. So that's why I threw that one in there. The end of it's like a right roll and a right and left grand. It's not that exciting to get through the rest of it. Heads pair off. So these are examples of just plain weird ones. Just plain weird. Again, things that I ran into while I was pushing checkers and went, why not? Everybody swing through. Boy run around a girl. Bend the line. Slide through. Cross chain through. Seems pretty simple so far.
No rolling.
You're right, I'm not rolling.
Slide through.
That wasn't on video, I stopped it.
Yep, you are.
The girl's hinge. Again, an identifier that isn't normally used. The girl-based triangle. Circulate.
Interesting.
I
Aren't we
didn't do this.
Yeah.
You're gonna go big like
Oh, there it
Yeah,
is.
here it is. Yeah.
This is you. Yeah, this is you, follow this.
All right, everybody take stock. Tally ho. Half. Good. Beautiful.
Over here,
Excellent.
right? Over here.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Stay put, stay,
Fantastic.
done.
Guess what? That's a right and left grand. We're not gonna do it. Boy run around a girl, half circulate and bend the line. Beautiful. Y'all are good.
Tally hoes are creative.
They are. Let's see. Heads lead right. Right and left through and veer left. All right. This one's also just plain weird. Crossover, circulate. Cross roll to a wave. Everybody hinge. Girls press ahead. Girls trade. In your blocks, touch a quarter. In your blocks, box counter rotate. All the boys jaywalk.
You're a girl.
You're back there.
He's a boy.
You're in my block over there and you're over here.
There you go.
Where were you?
You're here.
Where'd you go?
Slide
Here,
up.
There.
So.
Where's my diagonal?
Harlan's up. Yeah.
Okay.
Something doesn't seem right.
It is a small space, I understand.
I think you two are
Yes.
in the
Yeah,
wrong
yeah,
places.
yes.
Yeah.
Come over here.
Yeah, because Harlan is a girl, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That looks good. There you go.
That looks better.
That looks better. In your blocks, the leaders trade. All right, now here's where it gets a little weird. Girls press ahead. So we got some sort of weird line of three
Slide
thing
down.
going on here. Two people hanging out in limbo. Centers pair off, the others touch a quarter. The lead boy, left roll, right and left hand.
Yeah. Boy.
A little fudgy.
Took me a second to find out.
Okay, who am I, where am I?
Well, that was unexpected.
You think?
Yeah, it's,
It's a little fudgy. All right, and here's my last one. This one's really fun. I won't take full credit for it because I wrote this one with Dan Sahlstrom. That should give you a clue. All right,
Minneapolis.
it's only 4 calls. Technically. Heads go right and left through. That's one.
That's one.
Heads past the ocean. Here comes a very long third one.
Great.
Scoot and ramble. Replace the slide through with,
You got a single wheel in the middle.
that's it. Replacing the slide through with load the boat. We're replacing the last part of that with, perfect, tally ho, but,
Larry?
that's it.
You want me to move
Finish
up?
up girls, there you go. But boys start left, swing the fractions. Replace the last part of that with diamond chain through, but boys alter the wave and replace the last part of that with girls U-turn back, right and left grand. There's your fourth call.
One of those calls? What was I supposed to finish?
You finished the student ramble.
Yeah. How do I do
Now
that?
do all the parts you missed.
Right.
Do all the parts you missed. Finish the rest of it up. So, all right, that goes through my whole list of everything that I picked out of my funky stuff. But the idea basically that I use again to write interesting choreography is I don't try to write hard. You know it just happens, right? But I try to look at things that I haven't seen before, and of course I want the thing you should always ask yourself first, if you've never seen it before, is why haven't I seen it before? Because there might be a reason.
You don't get out.
And I don't get out much, but it's easy to do.
He wants to sit down. Are we-
Yes, go ahead. You're done. You're done with my part anyway.
That was entertaining.
The demo's quicker.
Is there any commentary on any of that?
Oh, there's going to be, absolutely. So any feedback, any comments, anything to add, Debbie?
I mean, that's probably those sequences are probably more suited for a very experienced C1 floor, dancers that dance, C2 or better. But they are doable. They are understandable. Go ahead.
All right, Vic Cedar. The Siamese, the axle was slightly odd because, normally on the axle, the ends cross cast back, not the leaders, So you didn't really have a formation for that. But dancers know what to do. I've called things like from the same setup, like horseshoe turn or something, where I expect or Siamese horseshoe turn, where I expect the leaders to clover, So dancers know what you want, and basically that's part of what challenge calling is about. It's not necessarily that you're doing the definitions 100% precisely. You're trying to stretch them a little bit and get the dancers to do things that they're not quite, I don't want to say it's fudgy or not quite legal, but you're trying to expand their horizons. Another thing with the Siamese stuff, that when you start getting asymmetric Siamese things, you can sometimes get ambiguous as to what the formation is, because you could have, suppose you have say parallel two-faced lines, you have the near box do a trail off, so you've got like a one face line before, and then a clump of four people all face the same direction. You call something like Siamese from there. You're thinking in your mind, well, these are couples, and these guys are automatically tandem, but the people that are dancing in that box of four don't know whether they're as couples or in tandem. So you have to be careful on that.
Right. And this is the old adage that as long as you convince the dancers to do it, it's perfectly legal.
Exactly.
I learned that from Bill.
Anyone?
Doesn't sound like the bill I know.
Yeah, right. Anyone else?
All right, well, we'll get to my portion. Creative challenges. Again, it's a concept that's difficult because challenge is challenge, and what's creative to my dancers may not be very interesting for your dancers. So it's certainly relative to where you're calling and who you're calling to, and the caliber of dancer. But I went back into my repertoire and I went to see what I've called in the last, well, not the last couple of years, but before that grabbed the dancers, and the dancers says, wow, that's kind of neat. And sadly enough, the concept that I'm going to look at is probably a C4 concept, but you get away with it, I think, legally two ways. One, you're ignorant of C4 stuff, and two, you're directional. So if you're directional, then you can legally get away with it. And it's playing with the concept of, I'm looking at different ways of getting into blocks and getting out of blocks. And likewise, if you're higher, getting into a stagger or getting out of a stagger. And it's the concept of using phantom O's and phantom butterflies to do that. And that has captivated many a floor that I've called to. And surprisingly, I've been quite surprised that it captivated floors. I thought it was something that everybody had dreamed of and everybody had used. But I'd like to just go over it a little bit, just in case you've not seen it, and certainly for the microphone. So can I get a square back up? Is that
No.
no?
Do we have enough people?
Yeah.
This time I want to be on this over here. My best side.
Oh, now I'm confused. You guys switched. I had you all set.
We're a match.
Sheesh. We're not color.
Who's going?
I can do it.
Okay,
I can go.
you've been spared, Jeremy.
I got it, okay.
Or, no, speared or spared? There we go.
Do. Let's see. Heads pass in. Just trying to think. Pass through, pass in. Just get into there quickly. Pass through. Who's the girl? Who's
I'm a girl.
I mean, no, Harlan's.
Harlan's the girl.
Yeah. So most of us get into blocks when we're first learning how to do it by having, like the boys press ahead or the girls press ahead. And I was talking to some callers who say, well, I've grown beyond that, and I now start saying, the boys phantom bucks the gnat or something to that effect. Everybody do a partner trade, and then touch a quarter, and circulate. And then we've seen callers who have used like a squeeze, where we trade and then we ask somebody to slide out, or we use spread to ask somebody to slide out. Let's have the center forward trade, and then all circulate. But the thing that's using the concept of phantom O's and phantom butterflies, and from this position, I would start by pointing out that the boys are in a phantom O, and the ladies are in a phantom butterfly. And if I use the concept directly by helping them that way and say, boys in your phantom O and girls in your phantom butterfly, circulate, go ahead and do so. That takes us to a nice block, right? And then if I wanted to get out of that, I could just use the same concept. Boys, you're in a phantom O, and girls, you're in a phantom butterfly. Go ahead and circulate again.
Oh, you're together.
There you go, and then everybody squeeze.
Oh, you're together. Yeah.
They see that. Okay, all 8 circulate. Right roll, make a wave. Slip. And do a quarter through. We can also use that approach coming from an ocean wave, because all the ends here, all the boys are in a phantom O, and all the ladies in the center are in a phantom butterfly. And you begin by helping them identify the formation that they're in. And you say, boys working in a phantom O, girls working in a phantom butterfly, circulate. And then they can make their way.
Up here, look at me.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
okay, no problem.
Go ahead, work in that same phantom O or butterfly, and go ahead and circulate again. That's right. And then we have all those, and then you can continue working in those phantom O's and butterflies. Go ahead and circulate. And when it's,
Lower butterfly, Cali Ho.
yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that sounds good.
Go ahead and do it one more time in your phantom O or butterfly. And then we've come out of it. Good. And so that's how I would begin using that. And then I would start to play, do a quarter through. And this really becomes challenging when you don't help the dancers. When the dancers have to fend for themselves, and you just simply say, and this is where you step out of legality, because now you're starting to use a C4 concept, and you just say, working in your phantom O or butterfly, and you've now left it up to the dancers to figure out what formation they're in. And of course we see that the ends are standing in a O and the centers are standing in a phantom butterfly. Go ahead and circulate. That's right. Good. And then in your blocks have the leader's trade.
We're leaders.
We are leaders. You're right.
That would be everybody.
That'd be everybody. Yeah, you two too, as well.
Or coffee.
And then you say,
Yesterday to you.
from here you say, in your phantom O or butterfly. And when you're in a block, people really have to dig deep and say,
Yes.
what the heck am I in? Am I in an O or I am in a butterfly? Go ahead and circulate. And then you resolved out of that block nicely. Works nicely for staggers as well. So it's something that's obvious to some callers and to me, and yet it really adds a dimension to the caller's thinking process in order to be able to survive through that call. Go ahead and have a seat. I'm not going to take you through all the sequences that I wrote. I just wanted to point out one concept that I've used down the road that has fascinated dancers and is very, very danceable. And I always get someone come up and say, that's C4. And it's like, well, yeah, but we don't know C4, so does that make it legal? Well, if you help directionalize it and you help point out what they're in, then I think phantom O's and phantom butterflies are part of the C1 and C2 world, and so it makes it legal, and it can make it very, very creative. Yes, Bill. Hold it. Would you please stand?
Oh, jeez.
I forgot about that.
Would you introduce yourself, Bill Harrison?
Yeah, so what he stated is correct, but you can make it perfectly legitimate by saying do your part. And we have the do your part concept in the advanced program. And if you precede that, then what he's doing is perfectly fine, even if that concept laid somewhere else, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
So Bill has done his part.
Thank you.
Yes.
A lot of times the quote-unquote legality or properness of a thing really just boils down to a semantic discussion of how you say it or how you want to do it. Or, of course, we also have the rule of, if you want to do it, teach it. And so, in my mind, you saying, girls, look, you're in a phantom butterfly. Boys, look, you're in a phantom O. And this is how we're going to do this. Now you've taught it and you can use it all night long. So.
Fair enough, yet it's the same adage. If you can convince the floor to do it, it's perfectly legal. Unless Vic's in the hall and then... Oh, let's welcome to the microphone Mr. Vic Cedar.
I'm not going to say it's more of, you've got phantom on the C1 list, you've got O's and butterflies on C1s. It's basically just concatenating or doubling up on the concepts. I mean, you can say from like an O, you can say if the boys are in tandem at the I don't know, fats of the O, whatever you call it. You can say boys tandem phantom swing through. I mean, you're adding two C1 concepts together. Same thing with the phantom O or butterfly. So I wouldn't necessarily put it as C4, but it's more often used in C4 than, of course, C1.
Thank you.
And there's another thing that you can do that I've done. I don't know if you want to do it, but where I use phantom overlapping things all the time. I don't call it that because that's way off list. But I'll take one O. Well, let's look at it this way. If I have the heads touch a quarter and spread, and then the sides touch a quarter and spread, I've got two different O's that are on top of each other, rotated 90 degrees. And I can use that very, very carefully, but it works. And you can say I have a very weird get out somewhere along the way where I do an O circulate from there, and everybody has to figure out which wall they're facing, and then I do another O circulate and roll, and then everybody, all the rollers end up in a different O than they were before, and then another O circulate once on a half and a right and left grand type of thing. But it's complex, and that's one that I only pull out when I'm really being a masochist. But it's a neat thing, and I don't think it's necessarily off list. It's just you have to explain it. You have to explain that you've got this formation here and another formation here, and they kind of get in the way of each other, and you have to ignore that.
Yeah, so there's basically two different ways that you can be creative and challenge. One is to do research, to go out and dance to other callers, and we all try to do that as much as possible. The good callers do. They go out and dance. In the past while, maybe by tapes. And the other one is to have a notepad by your bed, and when you have that aha moment, you have something to write it down, and you don't necessarily write the whole sequence. You write the part that, hey, this would be neat, and then you work forward or backward to make that sequence work. And these are just small components of a bad night, a bad oyster or something that gives you those nightmares, or just taking a move. And I don't think there's much to invent at this level. Someone has done it probably before.
Well, see, now Vic made me think about asymmetric tally-hos, so now I'm going to be...
He's going to be up all night.
One of the most creative things I ever, at one time, that I thought Vic did, and I went home and racked my brain for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours,
That's
literally trying to replicate something like he did. And then I noticed he stopped doing it. And
Well, if you've seen it once, you know it's gone.
And that was, there was a time when, and it was a short period relatively, that Vic wrote palindromes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to write palindromes. And it's like, how the hell are you doing that? And anyway, so it was interesting, but that actually was one of the more creative things I've ever seen is he really wrote palindrome sequences. And you can pull them out right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I noticed that when we were writing two couple sequences and doing Zoom dances and things, you really had to learn to be creative, and you started doing things like after each call roll, or after each call something. And it's just that little extra that tweaks the dancer and say, hey, this is neat. And they also go, hey, this caller's put some effort into this presentation, and they like that. Funny enough, though, I was sitting next to an old-time caller, a caller who was in the hall last night, and he says, I'm really perturbed. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, it's come down from the higher levels right down to SSD now. He says, all these sequences end at home.
Oh, no.
And he's going, the fun of square dancing when I was growing up was holding everybody's hand and doing a right and left grand and a big swing and promenade. And he says, I understand it at the higher levels, but how has that come down to SSD that we've eliminated the right and left grand and I sat there going, I know why I believe it's happened.
Yes.
Exactly, but I'm sitting there going, wow, what an interesting look at what square dancing is supposed to be to what it has become. And this guy he's missing what was important to him, and that was meeting every lady in the square every couple of minutes with a right and left grand and a smile and a whatever, and it made me think about where our creative, creative, we got a home, wow, and they didn't have to do it, versus, hey, maybe the dancers want to visit with each other a little bit as they go around.
And sociability.
Yeah, the sociability. Anyway, sorry.
So along those lines, I've noticed, at Plus and Mainstream and stuff, they like to whoop and holler and swing and do the right left grands and everything. Then you start getting to advanced, and C1 by C1, they just want to slap hands in the out one left, just go home, skip the right and left grand, skip it. You start going up to C3 and C4, and the dancers want to do the right and left grands again, because it's like, we got through the sequence, oh my God, here our victory lap, And it's like, we whooping and hollering, I got that sequence, you know, so it's like, it's this strange thing where right in the middle around C1, it's like people don't want to dance anymore. They just think we're there for the challenge.
Right.
So if we get a square up, I'll do my 2 C1 palindromes for you if you want to check that out. And these things, but I mean, these were written 20 years ago or more. And they are very hard to write.
That computer's 20 years old.
No, I get a new one every so often.
One more couple.
So, I mean, the first one's kind of an obvious one, but, all right. All 4 couples star through. All 8 recycle. All 8 swing and mix. And then we back up, or we do the reverse of the palindrome. All 8 recycle. And all 4 couples star through. All right, so that's like one of the trivial, you know, circle kind of movement things. But to do the other ones, it's a lot harder. Okay.
So, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but do you point out to the dancers they
Yeah.
did a palindrome?
Yeah, I will tell them beforehand that this is going to happen, because otherwise it just they don't get it at all. I mean, they just kind of realize they're doing some of the same calls again, but they don't know. I mean, you have to somehow point it out.
You don't say, here, we're going up to the top of the ladder, now you're coming back, so you know the calls. Go ahead.
It's not interesting unless you tell them it's
You
interesting.
have to tell them it's interesting, because they're like, oh my gosh, how do I do this call from here?
You just did.
Remember all the last.
So here's the basically the only real one I have at the C1. Heads recycle, sides divide, and star through. Extend, relay the top. Scatter, scoot. Of course, what would a palindrome sequence be without swing the fractions?
You're gonna tell us when you get to the top. Right?
Oh, good plan, huh? Split circulate. Okay, we're at the top. Now you just do all those calls again. So split circulate, swing the fractions. Scatter, scoot, relay the top.
They're not gonna remember it, as you can tell. Yeah.
Extend, sides divide and star through, the heads recycle. Isn't that weird?
That's pretty cool.
All right, sit down.
This is Debbie Cedar, and what he didn't tell you was the way he tries to construct these palindromes is to take advantage of the calls that you have that you can do from different positions. Recycle could be done from facing boxes, from wings.
Yeah, that was the whole gist of
That was the gist of that, right? So what you do is you do your homework and you figure out the calls that are creative in and of themselves that start from different formations. And how can you exploit that to your advantage when you're creating choreography?
So do you work with 2 sets of checkers and one from the end backwards and one in and see where you meet in the middle?
Yeah, you have to do something like that.
You're twisted.
It's a concept.
Yeah, well, like I said, I went home and worked for hours and hours and hours.
I heard a concept, and it was Vic that had done it. I had some dancers come back and said, we danced to this guy. God, you know what? He created, his name was Vic Cedar, and he created a V and a C. You're kidding. So, I think Vic stays up late at night sometimes, doesn't sleep well. Anyways, I think we have about 5 minutes left, and that'll give you a chance to sneak out and get yourself a cup of coffee before the lineup grows out there. We thank you very much for joining us, and we certainly thank you for contributing. We appreciate that greatly. Thank you guys. A question for you, because I have to fill out a form, and one of the questions on this form is,
You want to do it again?
should this subject be repeated next year?
Yes.
Okay, we have a few yeses.
I don't
And
think I
then the
can.
next question is, who would you like to see do that? And of course, other than the obvious, do you have any names you might want to throw forward you think would do a good job showing some creative choreography in challenge?
Actually, if he was, I don't even know if he's a member of CALLERLAB, but if he was able to make it Osamu.
Sorry, who?
Osamu Miyabe.
Oh,
From
I
Toronto.
mean, there's a couple of people we could bring over from Japan.
Okay. If you think of anybody in the next little while, let me know. It would be nice if they were a CALLERLAB member, and I'll put their name on the list as a suggestion of somebody that might do a nice job. Okay? Thank you very much, gang. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right.